You're listening to The Source on Texas Public Radio. I'm David Martin Davies. We're looking at what the primary races have shaped up to be. Yesterday was the filing deadline. We're speaking with Scott Braddock, editor of the Quorum Report and host of the Quorum Report Radio, a podcast that covers Texas politics. You can find wherever they have cool podcasts. Let's go to Debbie on the phones, 833-877-8255 for you to join us. And Debbie, thanks for calling in. You're on the air.
Hi, yes. I've been a Texas Democrat from the get-go, and I always have been very supportive. And I was getting a little anxious this year because there are so many, I feel, good Democratic candidates out there, and then some of them are opposing each other in the primaries, and my heart sinks because I feel like, please don't let this be a waste of really good Democratic talent, people who really care. So I'm curious, does the Texas Democratic Party leaders, do they not get involved with this in any way so that maybe we can spread the talent, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. But that's just my question.
Well, Debbie, thank you for that. I think Texas Democratic leaders is an oxymoron. But Scott Braddock, is there anybody, a ringmaster for this circus?
Well, I mean, I know what she means by that. Let me say a couple of things about it, and I appreciate Debbie's comments. Number one, I know that Democrats in general have a real issue with Democrats fighting with each other. They'd rather they play nice with a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them would rather be like Debbie and say, hey, why be fighting with each other when we ought to be fighting Republicans? On that point, I would say this. You and I both know, David, that Republicans in their primaries in Texas for the last 25 years, they rip each other apart before the vote in March, and then guess what they do? They unite and they go on and win in November. Every single election for most of the time that I've ever done this. So it can be a good thing to have a fight in the primary to really, the old saying, iron sharpens iron. A lot of these candidates come out as better candidates because they have gone through a tough primary and have had to figure out how to run those kind of campaigns, because guess what? Republicans are not going to take it easy on them heading into the November election. As far as whether there's any kind of a ringmaster, there's really not. And I know that a lot of Democrats in this state sort of look to what's known as the TDP, the Texas Democratic Party, the entity itself, to be the ones that would maybe do some of this as far as kind of, as Debbie said, spreading out the talent or having people run for different offices. A couple of realities about that. Number one, for state level offices like governor, lieutenant governor, comptroller, railroad commissioner, et cetera, there's really no money in those races for Democratic candidates. There's a little. They'll be able to find some donors. The only race, and this is a real thing, the only race that has real resources in it for a Democrat at the statewide level right now in Texas is the race for U.S. Senate. And that's because they can get national money. It has a higher profile and all of that. And that's why you saw Talarico, Crockett, Allred at one point, Beto O'Rourke, and also Joaquin Castro, all of those names that were in the mix for U.S. Senate, because that's the one they were really interested in, because you can't really get money and resources for any of these other races. That's just the reality right now. I would say this, too, as far as trying to have someone figure it out before the voters figure it out, has not gone well for Democrats just in the last 24 months. Think about the fact that it was party bosses, the ringmasters, if you will, nationally, who decided that President Biden would try to stick it out and they wouldn't have a real primary. And what did they end up doing? The party bosses put Vice President Harris in as the nominee instead of having a primary and instead of having the Democratic voters decide who their nominee ought to be. And we saw how that played out. That didn't go very well. It turned into a disaster for Democrats here in Texas and all around the country. And so I would say that if Democrats would and should learn anything from what has happened in national and state politics over the last 18 to 24 months, it is this, that they should let Democratic voters decide who the best nominee ought to be to go up against the Republicans in November.
So U.S. Senator John Cornyn is facing what could be the toughest election fight of his political career.
Yes, sir.
He is going up against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and U.S. Congressperson Wesley Hunt in that Republican primary. Paxton is up out ahead, and he's leading these polls. And he's still, though, dogged by all these controversies and scandals, his divorce against State Senator Angela Paxton and all these other things that have gone around him, his financial issues. So how is that shaping up?
You know, it is the toughest fight that Cornyn has been in for a long time. For perspective, if you go back and look at some of his previous reelection efforts, Cornyn would often, as the incumbent Republican senator, he would get 5, 6, if not 7 or 8 challengers in the Republican primary. And David, in years past, Cornyn didn't really even have to campaign that hard to smoke all those other challengers. He would get 60 to 65% against 6 or 7 people in a Republican primary. That's not the case anymore. He's not politically bulletproof the way he was, 15 or 20 years ago. And he's been in office a long time, right? By the way, Jasmine Crockett in her announcement speech this week was saying that she was a very little girl when Cornyn was first elected to elected office in the state many years ago. And so here you have Cornyn really in the fight of his life. He is up against Paxton. This is a guy who is scandal-ridden, as you said, but it really hasn't caused him any problems with Republican primary voters. In fact, the more scandals and the more accusations get thrown at Paxton, and this might seem just crazy to a lot of folks, it might maybe crazy to your listeners, but the more accusations get thrown at him, the more Republican primary voters actually like him.
He becomes more Trump-like.
That's exactly right. And I would tell you that the impeachment effort against Paxton a couple of years ago, even some of the people who helped to orchestrate that would now privately admit that one of the main things they accomplished with that is making Paxton even more popular with GOP primary voters. Now, I can tell you from my reporting across the state and talking to Republican voters all over the place that there's one theme that emerges among many. This theme is this: that they think everyone in government is corrupt. They think everyone in government has a mistress. They think everyone in government is on the take. And if you start with that as your, and of course that's not true, but if you start with that as your baseline, then what do you judge candidates on? You judge them instead on issues, and are they going to fight for me? And it's sort of the inverse of what we were talking about with Democrats, Democrats want somebody to fight Trump. Republicans want somebody to stand with Trump. So think about Paxton, who he is as a political figure. He was there. He was giving one of the speeches on January 6th when they stormed the Capitol, right? He was with Trump. He was the only attorney general in the country who would file a lawsuit to overturn the election when Trump lost to President Biden. He has stood with Trump, and the MAGA voter base loves that, and that's one reason that Cornyn is in big trouble. Now, I would say the case for Cornyn with the MAGA folks is this. Cornyn votes with Trump all the time, 99%. I mean, he has that voting record. And here's the thing. I'm not sure if President Trump's going to get involved in this. I do think that if he would endorse Cornyn or Paxton, that this race might be over the next day. Who knows? But Trump likes them both. He likes Paxton for the reasons that I outlined, including that lawsuit to overturn the election. But he also likes Cornyn because not only has Cornyn been a good vote for Trump in the Senate, but you remember in his previous position as the Republican whip, that's where he would go and really round up the other senators to vote for Trump's agenda. And Trump knows that Cornyn was a good soldier for him doing that. And so I think that if Trump was really put on the spot about this race, he would have a hard time, figuring out who to go with.
Yeah, and Cornyn voted for those nominees, no matter how 100%. Bad they were.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So Representative Wesley Hunt from Houston, he follows along that Ken Paxton way of thinking. He's not as not scandalized as much as Paxton, but still, right. Doesn't that split the vote against people who are anti-Cornyn?
He's a real X factor in this race. It's a good question. I'm trying to figure out, number one, who's the real money behind Wes Hunt? We still don't really know that fully just yet, who's really supporting this. It was a lot of the establishment Republicans in Houston who helped to get Hunt elected to the U.S. House in the first place. You might remember he ran for Congress and was unsuccessful originally against Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher there in H-Town. And then in the next redistricting in 2021, they basically drew a district for Wes Hunt in Harris County at the behest of some of those establishment Republicans in the Houston area who really liked this guy. They thought he was, somebody who was an upstart, and they were fans of this guy, Wes Hunt. And so for those people who pushed so hard, those Republican contributors and others who pushed hard for him to get into Congress, I think they're a little flummoxed right now, David, as to why he's running for the U.S. Senate against someone who is one of their guys, John Cornyn, but he really is a complicating factor here. And whether it splits the anti-Cornyn vote, I'm not completely sure. I've been looking at some of the polling. I think the numbers aren't completely clear on that just yet. But I do think that it's a complicating factor for Cornyn simply because with three candidates in the race. If Cornyn can't get over 50% in the first round of voting in March, then he's going to a runoff. And in Texas, politically, that means you're a dead man walking. If you're an incumbent, head into a runoff. Legislatively, the fact is that those incumbents in runoffs have about a 6% political survival rate. They don't get reelected.
I'm going to go to Jake really quick on the phones. Jake, we're short on time, but you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Listening from Alabama, thanks for taking my call. The question I have for Scott is this. Does he believe, and do Democratic leaders in Texas believe, that having competitive primaries will lead to a surge of voters and help them get contact information and maybe help them in the fall?
All right, Jake, good question. Appreciate that. So, Scott, these competitive primaries raise their profile, raise some money, good things?
That is an excellent question, and I would think that Democratic leaders should take note of the question and maybe do what Jake just said. Jake from Alabama just said. What I remember historically was in 2008, the last time there was a giant surge in Democrats voting in a primary. That was, you remember, David, that was when then Senator Obama was facing off with Secretary Clinton.
Yeah.
We had 3 million people vote in the Democratic primary in this state. The huge voter list that they would have generated out of that, I don't know if they just threw it in the trash or what after that, because I never saw any evidence that they ever used it.
Scott Braddock, he's the editor of the Quorum Report. He hosts Quorum Report Radio, a politics that tracks Texas politics. You can find it wherever they make good, cool podcasts. Scott, thanks for coming on the air today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
That's The Source on Texas Public Radio. Thank you for listening.